Hello, this is Allie with the Perception Trainers, author of The Perception Diet, and today we are going to finish up our series on self-sabotage. So if you haven't watched part 1 and part 2, I have put the links to those videos down below, and I suggest that you go watch those first and then come back to this one when you are ready. So just to quickly recap, in part 1 we talked about how your self-sabotaging behavior is comfortable and familiar, and you know how to be the person who does your self-sabotaging behavior, and you know how to kind of live out that experience. And so the question that I want you to ask yourself for that one is, who would I be without this self-sabotaging behavior? How would I interact with the world around me? How would I interact with the people around me? How would I, who would I be if I didn't have this self-sabotaging behavior? And start to imagine that person, right? And it might feel uncomfortable and it might feel scary at first, but that's going to help you move towards the results that you want. And then in part 2, we talked about how that there is a payoff. So you are getting some positive intention and you're getting some positive result from your self-sabotaging behavior. So whether it be, it's allowing you to rest, or it's allowing you to get attention, because you don't know how to ask for love and attention, so you constantly sabotage yourself and harm yourself so that you feel like you're worthy of people looking at you. Any of these things. So just asking yourself, what am I getting out of this this self-sabotaging behavior, and what need am I meeting that maybe I could start to meet in a different way, right? So that's part 1 and part 2. And now part 3, the last thing that I want to talk about with self-sabotaging behavior is the pain-pleasure paradox that comes with self-sabotage. So when I say pain-pleasure paradox, what I mean is this: most people who don't love themselves and most people who have self-sabotaging behaviors do not believe that they are worthy of just pure pleasure, okay? So this can manifest in a lot of different ways, but mostly it manifests by, you feeling guilty every single time you try and do something nice for yourself. So maybe you feel totally guilty every time you rest. Maybe you feel really guilty when you sit and watch a movie and aren't doing anything else. Maybe you feel really guilty when you have a conversation with somebody where you talk about you and you explain how you're feeling and what's going on with you, and then you feel really guilty, like you've been a burden on them, or any of these kind of things. So what you've done with your self-sabotaging behavior is you've built in a form of pleasure in your life that has pain laced in there, right? So for instance, if we're talking about like overeating, there's pleasure in the overeating, right? There's pleasure in the eating. There's pleasure in the food that tastes good. There's pleasure in how it feels in your body at first. But because your self-sabotaging behavior, so for instance, if it's eating, is not actually, contributing to your health, it has a negative backlash, right? So you have this moment of pleasure that has a moment of pain engineered right into it, right? So same thing with alcohol. Like there's this moment of pleasure, there's the release of drinking, and then there's the pain that's associated with it. So whether that be how you feel physically or how it affects your life negatively, anything like that. Getting sick, obviously, right? That there's the pleasure of getting to rest, getting to check out, getting to say no, with the pain of being sick. And so when we think about our self-sabotaging behaviors, a lot of the time it's our way of giving ourselves some form of pleasure, but making sure that there's some form of punishment that's engineered directly into it because we feel guilty and unworthy of just pure pleasure. And this is why so many people, when I say to them, let's start practicing something where you do something every single day that brings you pleasure, that's just for the sake of bringing you pleasure. And most people can't even think of something that they would like to do that would just bring them pleasure. Or they think of a behavior that has some form of pleasure, like eating or drinking or gossiping or whatever, that also has a little bit of pain laced in there. And we as a society tend to feel really guilty and really dirty and really shameful when we think of doing something just that's purely for pleasure that has no negative backlash. And this is a symptom of a society that doesn't love itself, right? And so you having this self-sabotaging behavior, you need to understand that there's a pain-pleasure dichotomy going on, that you don't believe that you deserve just pure pleasure. So you're making sure that you engineer some pain into whatever form of pleasure you're allowing yourself at this moment. And what I want to tell you is that as afraid as you might be of indulging in pleasure, because again, like so many people are afraid that if they let themselves have what they really want, or if they let themselves even figure out what they really want, that they're just gonna like go off the deep end. They're just gonna become like pleasureaholics and you know, become bums on the street who are just lazy people who just only do things that feel good and blah 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 blah. And we're so afraid of becoming this person that's just like living for ourselves or just living for pleasure or whatever. But what I want to say is that the longer you feel guilty about pleasure, the longer you withhold pleasure from yourself, the longer you do not allow yourself to just have moments of pleasure and enjoyment and you know, doing things that nourish you and nurture you and get your needs met, the longer you're going to struggle with self-sabotaging behavior. And we're also so afraid that we're going to become these selfish people who are only thinking about ourselves if we are engaging in pleasurable activities and in taking care of our own needs. But if you really think about it, how self-centered are you having this self-sabotaging behavior? How much time do you spend thinking about your self-sabotaging behavior? How much time do you spend engaging in your self-sabotaging behavior? Who in the world is your self-sabotaging behavior benefiting? Probably no one. And it's probably a detriment to yourself. It's definitely a detriment to yourself. And it's not making you this lovely, selfless, giving person that you think not letting yourself experience pleasure is going to make you, right? It actually makes you more selfish. It makes you more self-involved. And I'm not saying that this is bad, okay? And I'm not saying that you should feel badly about this and another thing that you should beat yourself up for. What I'm saying is I want you to look at the logic of it and say, okay, I think that giving myself pleasure will make me a selfish person, when in fact, as I'm not allowing myself pleasure, or as I'm only allowing myself pleasure that's laced with pain, it's actually making me more self-centered. It's making me less energetic. It's making my cup emptier. And that leaves me less of a person who's able to give. That leaves me less of a person who's able to nourish and nurture and love other people, because I'm so focused on my own pain and my own struggle and my own what's going on with me. And so what I'm saying is, first things first, fully and completely forgive yourself for having your self-sabotaging behavior, because it's not your fault. It's not something that you should feel badly that you do, and it's not something that makes you a bad person, okay? It makes sense, and as we've gone along, hopefully you can see where this probably came from in yourself. And then the second thing I want you to notice is that, you know what, you're going to have to find a new identity. And maybe this is a small thing and maybe this is a big thing, depending on how intense your self-sabotaging behavior is. But, you know, you're going to need to find a new way of relating to the world. You're going to need to find a new way of relating to yourself, and you're going to need to find a new way of getting your needs met, and you're going to need to find the ability to figure out what you need and be able to ask for that, or be able to make that happen for yourself. And then you're going to have to allow yourself pleasure. You're going to have to allow yourself getting your needs met without there needing to be this big dramatic self-sabotaging thing that goes along with it. And as afraid as you might be that this is going to make you a selfish, self-centered, terrible person, what I want you to know is that in your self-sabotaging behavior, you're actually creating your own worst fear, right? And that by allowing yourself to get your needs met in a healthy way, you will actually become far less self-centered and far more able to give. But the thing is, because you will have your needs met, right? And so it's not that in your self-sabotaging behavior that you are a selfish person. What it is, it's like It's the same thing as if you're physically starving. If you're physically starving, it's very difficult to think about anything else, right? It's very difficult to do anything else. It's very difficult to care about other people if you're starving, because your base need isn't met. And if your cup is fully empty, if your body is empty, you're going to be driven to go get that need met, right? There's not a lot left for you to give to other people when you're completely depleted, right? So it's the same thing with this. When you're getting your needs met, when you're filling yourself up, when you're loving yourself, when you're allowing yourself pleasure and you're allowing yourself your needs to get met, and you're allowing yourself to be this person who is, you know, healthfully getting their needs met, you feel so much better, you are so much, you know, more peaceful, and you then have so much more to give. You become the person you're trying to be by not allowing yourself to get your needs met. And that's just the way that it works, okay? So I just want you to think about that. Letting yourself have pleasure, you're actually creating your own worst fear by not letting yourself have pleasure and not letting yourself get your needs met. Then you will be creating the person that you really actually want to be by allowing yourself these things. And so just think about that. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, please leave them down below. Like, subscribe. You can find me on Facebook at Perception Trainers, and I'm on Instagram, Urban Fruit Bat. And then if you have any video requests, I'd love to hear from you. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks, guys.